Nobody hired you to live. How Buddhism reveals what you really want. You want your mind to settle down. It runs around all the time and gets worn out, so it needs a place to rest, a place where it can get its bearings. Have a sense of what really is important and what's not. So many times things that are pressing, things that demand your attention, really don't deserve your attention. They just demand it. If you play along with them, your energy gets wasted. We only have a limited amount of time and a limited amount of energy in this life, so you want to make sure that it's used well. You need to have a clear idea of what's worthwhile, what's not worthwhile, what you want out of your life. Of course, a lot of other people have lots of ideas about what they want out of you, so you have to be able to separate yourself out for a while and ask yourself, is that what I really want for me? That's what the Buddha had to do. His father and mother had everything all planned for him, all set up, and they thought they'd done a really good job. But the Buddha said, no, that's not what I want. I want true peace of mind. I don't want just wealth and power. I want true peace of mind. Here he had wealth and power offered to him. A lot of us don't even have that, and yet we let our time get frittered away with who knows what. So it's good to stop and take stock of what's really important in life. Get some time by yourself, let the mind settle down, and then you can ask it, what do you really want out of life? Sit with the question for a while and see what happens. See what comes up as something really important for you. The Buddha came up with the best answer. He said, I want to learn how not to create suffering for myself and for other people. If that sounds like a good answer to you, then this is the practice: being generous, being virtuous, and training the mind in good qualities, the qualities that enable it to see deeper inside. But you want to make sure that you're not wasting your time with other things. So ask yourself, these activities I'm engaged in, which ones are important and which ones are not? Don't wait until the doctor says you only have a couple of months left to live before you have this conversation with yourself. Have it now, and have it with yourself while the mind is quiet. Give it some time to settle down first, and then have the conversation. You may be surprised at some of the answers. But once you've decided what's important, then you stick with it. Don't be a traitor to your knowledge of what's really good in life, what's really worthwhile in life. As Ajahn Fuang once said, nobody paid us money to be born. Nobody hired us to be born. We're here on our own. And the question is, what do you want to do with this? Some people might give a very selfish answer, but a wise answer is the Buddha's answer. I want to learn how to stop causing suffering. Not getting what you want. Most of the Buddha's descriptions of dependent co-arising end with the suffering of aging, illness, death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, distress, despair. But there's one that goes beyond that. From suffering, it says, there's conviction. In other words, conviction in the Buddha's teachings that there is a way out. Then, based on that conviction, you practice until you gain a sense of joy. The joy becomes the basis for concentration, then discernment, then release. So, that version of dependent co-arising ends positively, with suffering leading you ultimately to follow the path that gets you to something that's not dependent, something independent, which is total release. It's interesting to think about how that connection between suffering and conviction comes about. Remember, in suffering there's clinging and craving. We usually think of craving as being bad because it causes suffering. Yet, there's a part of the definition of suffering, or the explanation of what suffering means, which includes desire, but it's actually a skillful desire, one that the Buddha has you cultivate. It's in the phrase, not getting what you want. It sounds pretty ordinary. There are so many things in life where we want something, we don't get it, and then we're unhappy. But the Buddha's not talking about that generic kind of suffering. He's talking about something deeper, that those who are subject to birth don't want to be subject to birth, but he says this is not to be gained simply by wishing, and so on. If you're subject to aging, you don't want to age, but that's not to be gained by wishing. You don't want to die, but freedom from death is not to be gained by wishing. Down through sorrow, lamentation, pain, distress, despair. In each case, if you're subject to these things, you can't simply wish your way out of them. But the Buddha doesn't discourage you. He doesn't say, well, just give up all desire, give up hope, don't want things to be different from the way they are. Look at him. As a young man, he examined his life and realized he didn't want to age, grow ill, die. He wanted to gain freedom from these things. As he searched, he finally found that there was a path of practice that could get you beyond aging, illness, and death. So the desire to go beyond aging, illness, and death is not to be discouraged. You are wanting things to be different from the way they are, but you realize that simply wanting is not going to be enough. You actually have to follow the path. That's what conviction is all about. You're convinced that this is a good path. The desire in the suffering itself is what compels you to practice. As Ajahn Fuang used to like to say, nobody's hired us to practice. Nobody's forced us to practice. We're practicing of our own free will. And while it's true that nobody has forced us to practice, the simple fact of suffering and the fact that we don't want to suffer is what pushes us. The Buddha talks about this kind of desire in a positive way in many places. There's a passage where he talks about household distress, when you don't get the sights, sounds, smells, tastes, tactile sensations, and ideas you want. He says to replace that with what he calls renunciate distress. When you think about the fact that there are people who have gained awakening, but you're not there yet, that sense of distress should compel you to practice. From renunciate distress, then you go to renunciate joy, when you begin to gain insight into things that have burdened the mind, and you see that you're now free from those things. So the distress there is actually useful. It's to be encouraged, but you don't just sit with the distress. You act on it through your conviction that there is a way out. Similarly, with the issue of desire as one of the bases for success, you probably know the story. Venurananda is staying in a park. A Brahmin comes to visit him and asks him, "This path you're practicing, what's the goal?" And Ananda says, "One of the goals is to put an end to desire." What kind of path do you follow to the end of desire? Ananda describes the 4 bases for success: concentration based on desire, concentration based on persistence, concentration based on intent, concentration based on analysis. The Brahmin says, then it's an endless path. How can you use desire to get rid of desire? Ananda asks him a question in return. He says, "You came to this park. Before you came here, did you have the desire to come here?" "Well, yes." "How about now that you've arrived?" "The desire is gone because I'm already here." Ananda says, "It's the same with the path. You use desire to get yourself to a place where you don't need to desire anything anymore. Again, you don't do that simply by wishing. You think in terms of cause and effect. You follow the path. In this case, it's the path of concentration plus right effort, and by implication, all of the other factors of the path. When the Buddha talks about the various wings to awakening, the question always comes up, how do you develop them? The answer always comes down to following the Noble Eightfold Path. So look at your practice. The path comes down to training in heightened virtue, heightened concentration, heightened discernment. Which aspect are you missing? In which aspect are you weak? Virtue is there to make you honest and more sensitive to your mind as you go through the day. We talk about being mindful of mind states, as if it were happening as something in the abstract that you just observe without getting involved. But it's actually happening as you're making choices as you go through the day about what you're going to do. What kind of choices are you making? What kind of intentions are you acting on? This is not just a matter of watching things coming and going, but noticing which intentions in the mind are skillful and which ones are not. If there's an unskillful intention, how do you say no to it in an effective way? This kind of knowledge the Buddha calls penetrative. He talks about how discernment sees arising and passing away in a penetrative way. But what does that mean, to see it penetratively? It's not just watching the fact of arising and passing away. It's noticing that when some things arise, you should want them to continue because they're skillful. They have good effects. When other things arise, you should want to put an end to them because they don't. You're making value judgments. So you're thinking not simply about things arising and passing away, but also about where are they leading you? What kind of actions will they inspire in you? Bringing the practice of the precepts into your daily life makes you sensitive to that aspect of what's going on in your mind. It also prepares you for concentration because it gives you practice in looking at your intentions. So now that you're going to practice concentration, you're going to focus on one intention. You're going to keep with the breath here in the present moment, and for the time being, you're going to preoccupy yourself with nothing but the breath. We know that concentration is not the end of the path. It's not the goal. But you really want to focus on it because it is the path, and you want to give all your energy to the path. There's a Zen teacher, Dogen, who made the comment one time that the development of the path is basically the same thing as the realization of the end of suffering. What he meant was that you don't sit here going through the motions of the path with your mind down at the end of the path, saying, "When is that going to come?" You focus here on what you're doing, getting really involved in the breath. As you focus here, the end of the path will appear right here. As the Buddha said, you leap up or you leap into the breath. You grow confident, steadfast, and your mind gets released into its perception of just being with breath. The whole body. Think of every sensation you have in the body as being related to the breath somehow. Make a survey through the body. When you breathe in, where do you feel it inside? When you breathe out, where do you feel it? Is there a boundary around the breath? Well, no. How far can you gain a sense of how the breath relates to the different organs of the body, the different parts of the body, out through the skin, out beyond the skin? Really immerse yourself in the perception of the breath. If there are any tight spots in the body, don't think of them as being solid. Think of them simply as blocked breath, stagnant breath. And if breath is stagnant, what do? You open up all the channels around it so that it can flow. In other words, you relate to your sense of the body as you feel it from within, totally in breath terms. Try to gain a sense of oneness with the breath, your awareness in the breath, and the sense of well-being filling the whole body. As you do this, you begin to notice how you're putting this together. The way you breathe, the way you talk to yourself, the images you hold in mind. All of these things are called sankhara, fabrication. They're things you put together. The Buddha wants you to get really good at this, because the path as a whole is the best fabricated thing there is in the world. As you put it together, you begin to gain some insight into how you not only put this together, but how you also put all your other emotional states, mental states together using these three things: the way you breathe, the way you talk to yourself, and the images you hold in mind, the feelings you focus on. This is how training in heightened concentration gets you to training in heightened discernment, because fabrication, when you look at dependent co-arising, is right next to ignorance. The implication being that if you fabricate your experience with any of these means, breathing, your inner conversation, and your perceptions, you're going to suffer. But if you do it with knowledge, it can become the path to the end of suffering. You're developing new skills. The word for ignorance, avidya, means not only not knowing, but also lack of skill. The discernment that comes with mastering these skills is what enables you to see these things for yourself. You're not just cutting out the Buddha's brilliant ideas and concepts and pasting them on your mind or on your experience. You're actually learning about what's going on in your mind and your body by developing skillful mental states and skillful physical states with the breath. It's in this way that you complete the path, composed of the 8 factors that boil down to virtue, concentration, discernment, to the point where you can let go of everything else that's not on the path. Then finally, you let go of the path itself because it encourages you to do so. Right view encourages you to look at things as fabrication so that you can see where they're not worth engaging in. You see where their appeal is, where their allure is, but also where their drawbacks are, to the point where you discover, okay, that's not worth it. A value judgment. When you've cleared away your other attachments, then you turn around to this attachment, to right view itself. You take this apart because it tells you to. It basically refers back to itself. This too is fabricated, so take it apart. Take it apart. Take apart your desire and passion for it, and then you'll be freed. That's the point where the Buddha tells you to totally let go of desire and passion, but up to that point, you use it. The desire to find what is free from aging, illness, and death. It's what's been motivating you all along, like the Brahmin walking to the park. When you get there, you can put the desire down, like the Brahmin who's arrived. So, have a clear sense of which of your desires are part of the problem and which of your desires are part of the solution. The desires that are willing to put in the effort to master the path are the ones you want to encourage. The desire to simply sit around thinking, I want this, I want that, without really doing what needs to be done. Even with worldly things, that doesn't work. And of course, it's not going to work with the Dhamma. You can't play the reverse of Barney the dinosaur saying, well, if I don't want something strong enough, then it'll come. You learn how to cultivate skillful desires and then apply them in a skillful way. So those desires there in suffering can actually be cultivated wisely. The desires not to age, not to grow ill, not to die actually become part of the path, the motivation behind right effort, the motivation behind right resolve. As you apply them to the path, you find the happiness of actually getting what you want. Self-control. When people stay at one place, they tend to accumulate a lot of things. When they move, they have to sort through their things. That's when you begin to realize how little you really need. Sometimes it's difficult. You want this, you want that. But finally, the choice has to come down to, what do you really need? You can't take everything with you. The more you try to take with you, the more you get weighed down. The same principle applies to our lives. When we forget about the fact that we're going to get old and ill, we're going to die, we tend to accumulate a lot of things we claim as being ours or us. Our sense of priorities gets dulled. Everything that we can lay our hands on is ours. Your sense of who you are tends to accumulate a lot of excess baggage too. But the time will come when you have to go. And what will you take with you then? Ajahn Suwat once noted that it's hard to say it's a paradox. He just noted the contrast. For all the things the Buddha says are not self, not self, not self. Still he says that we're the owners of our actions. Those are things that do belong to us, something we have control over, our intentions. You can choose to do one thing, or you can choose to do another. In that lies your power for good or for evil, for happiness or for misery. That's what we take with us. This is why this should have top priority. It's one of the reasons why you focus on the present moment in the meditation, so that you can see your intentions clearly. You can see the states of mind that motivate them, that drive them. All you have to do is see that much, and that can make all the difference in the world. The problem is that, for the most part, we've learned to lie to ourselves not only about our intentions, but also about the motivations lying behind them. Either we deny that we did something, or we deny that there were some less than stellar motives behind what we did. When this is the case, we really are in trouble. Because the main factor or the main power in our lives is something we're blind to. When we are blind to it, it's not really under our control. Because we are so busy focusing on other things, we neglect the true power in our lives. This is one of the reasons why the Buddha teaches us not self, to tell us to look around to see what really does lie under our control, because the sense of control or the idea of control is essential for our idea of who we are. If we don't control something, how can we really claim it as ourself? How can we really claim it as ours? Now, our intentions do lie under our control, so this is where we focus. You want to make sure that your intentions are based on skillful desires, skillful motivations, no greed, no anger, no delusion. That requires a lot of strength. Most people live their lives in line with what the texts call yata kama, which means in line with your past actions. Your past actions push you in a particular way, and you just keep going along with the flow. Whatever comes up in your life, you let yourself get swayed by it. Good things come up, you're in a good mood. Bad things come up, you're in a bad mood. And the only way you can get yourself in a good mood is try to make sure as many good things come up as possible. But no matter how good the world is, as that passage we just chanted now says, the world is swept away. It does not endure. It offers no shelter. There's no one in charge. There's nothing in the world that's really our own. So no matter how good the world is, it's never all that good. This is why the Buddha decided when he had the choice either to rule or to go out and become a Buddha, he took the latter course. As a ruler, he could have done whatever he wanted to help people under his power, but he couldn't save them from aging, illness, and death. He couldn't prevent untoward things from happening to them, no matter how hard he tried. So rather than trying to set up good outside circumstances for them, he took the path of teaching them how to live peacefully, how to live lives of integrity in the midst of all kinds of situations, good or bad. That was a great gift, because this is one teaching that can be used in all circumstances. It's a skill that can be used in all circumstances, learning how to resist the negative impulses that come from negative things outside. We had a visitor today, a Thai man who was complaining about having to go back to Thailand and drive there. He said there are no rules at all. His mother came along and she complained that it made her very tense to ride with him in Thailand because he was always getting tense about the traffic. He asked, "How can you not get tense about the traffic? You have to come out to a quiet place like this," he says, "in order to make your mind quiet." But I told him, the whole purpose of the teaching is to keep your mind quiet in the midst of unquiet things, chaos, negative things. He said, "How could you do that? It's impossible." He totally missed the message of the Buddha, which is that it is possible to maintain stillness of mind in the midst of the craziest circumstances. That's the skill we're working on here. That's the Buddha's gift to us, showing us the skill of learning how to treasure our virtue, our concentration, our discernment as our most important possessions. How to protect our intentions to make sure that they're not simply pushed around by negative things outside. You look around at the world and it's hardly ideal at all. We're living in bad times. Even in the midst of good times, there are still aging, illness, and death. They can't be stopped no matter how much we try to pretend they're not there. Old people get pushed off to old people homes. Sick people get pushed off into hospitals and hospices. Dead people disappear from accident scenes as quickly as possible. We try to deny these the facts, but they can't be denied. They're there all the time. What we need is a skill in learning how to deal with aging, illness, and death without suffering from them. This is precisely the skill the Buddha taught, so that no matter how much pain there is, no matter how much injustice there is in the world, we can still maintain our equilibrium. We don't let somebody else's injustice make us become unjust. We don't let somebody else's misbehavior become an excuse for our misbehavior. We learn how to resist these things. We learn the skills in resisting. In other words, you have to learn what things you have to stand up for, and what things you have to make yourself as streamlined as possible to let the currents of the world flow right past. One of the skills you need as a meditator is learning how to deal with loud noises while you're meditating. Think of the body as an enormous screen, like the screen on a window, and the sound can go right through the holes. In other words, you don't set up resistance to things like that. Just let them pass, pass, pass. There are a lot of events in the world that have to be like that too. Don't put yourself in a position where you're affected by them. The less you lay claim to them as being yours or your necessities for happiness on the external level, the less you're likely to be attacked by events of the world. Then on the other hand, there are things you do have to stand up for. You have to stand up for your principles. When the choice comes that you have to act, you want to make sure that you act on principles of integrity. This is one of the reasons why the Buddha expressed the precepts in such short phrases and not long roundabout discussions of principle. Simply, you don't kill, you don't steal, you don't have illicit sex, you don't lie, you don't take intoxicants. Period. Often, when a situation is difficult, when the winds of change reach hurricane force, you need those simple guidelines to live by, to keep reminding yourself that no matter what, no matter how bad things seem outside, you're not going to give in to those pressures. In other words, the Buddha's teaching you to be a warrior and giving you a sense of which battles need to be fought and which battles don't need to be fought. If you go battling everything, you're not a very smart warrior. You have to have a sense of which battles can be won, which battles have to be won, which battles are worth trying to win, and which battles you don't have to bother with. The big battle is just this one, making sure that your intentions don't get swayed by outside events in a way that would make you do something unskillful against your principles. This is one of the reasons why we practice concentration, to make the mind strong. And we develop discernment to figure out what our real battles are. You're sitting here with the breath, and nothing outside is happening at all, but you find the mind wandering out of control. If that's the way your mind is, how can you trust it not to go wandering way out of control when there are really negative things outside? You've got to work on this habit. When mind wanders off, you don't follow it. Just stay right here. Thoughts may wander, but you don't have to wander after them. If you don't wander after them, after a while they don't have any pulling power over you. You've learned how to let go. They'll come back and pester you again, but you don't have to get involved with them. You just stay right here with the breath. All the skills you need in order to stay right here are the important ones. We're developing strength of the mind, and then you use your discernment to figure out exactly what you really need in order to maintain a sense of well-being, how little you can get by with. It's like knowing you have to move. You've got to sort through your possessions to figure out which ones are essential, which ones are not. This is why monks are taught to go out into the forest every now and then. When you go out, you don't want to go out laden down with too many things, just what's essential. That gives you a good perspective on life. The Buddha's teachings on discernment in general is just this sort of thing. Knowing you're going to have to leave someday, so what do you really want to take with you? That comes down to you what kind of actions you want to look back on in your life. If you want to look back on actions that are principled, inspiring, noble, then act in those ways. Create those actions in your life and develop the qualities of mind in terms of virtue, concentration, and discernment that make it easier to act in those ways. Years back, John McPhee wrote about a time in Alaska when he was visiting a couple who were subsistence farmers in the forest there. He was embarrassed about the fact that he'd brought along a little inflatable pillow. He wasn't really roughing it the way they did. The wife told him, "We're not here roughing it. We're actually trying to smooth it out here in the rough." This is what the practice is for us here as well. We're trying to smooth things to make it easier for us to behave in a way that we would admire. Sometimes there are tough decisions, but if you develop your skills in terms of virtue, concentration, and discernment, you find it easier and easier to make those tough decisions. One of them is to pare down your sense of what you really need for your happiness so that fewer and fewer things can threaten you. Another is to develop your strength of mind so that it can withstand the push of thoughts and emotions that would make you do or say or think unskillful things. When you've developed these strengths, when you've learned how to pare down your belongings, then you're ready to wander in the world without being affected by the world. Then, you can trust the path you're following to take you where you really want to go.